Whenever we want to make change in our life or make something happen that isn't happening now, or get more successful, or whatever that change happens to be, it's very common that one of the things that we will naturally think of is to do more of something. We'll naturally go to that place of, okay, in order for this to happen, what I need to do is to add stuff. I need to add stuff into the equation. And what I want to look at today, simply because it's a place where our minds don't tend to go to, is to look at the opposite. Imagine if change could happen because we actually take things away rather than add. Imagine if we can get more of what we want by placing limits on things rather than adding stuff into the recipe bowl. And I just want to look at that idea because, as I say, it's very easy for our mind to think, right, we just need to do more of something. We need to add an extra ingredient. If only we add an extra ingredient, then everything will work out right. I have to do something. There has to be something extra that isn't there at the moment. But it's often very likely that what actually needs to happen is we need to take something out. Rather than add something, rather than provide something extra, taking something away can often be the thing that makes the difference. And yet, because we're so programmed to think, right, we must do more, I'll have to add something extra in to make the change, we can very easily overlook that we can get what we need, we can get a solution by looking at what's there already and taking something away from that. So I just want to give you a few examples just to get you into the sense of what it looks like to limit something that's already there that might get you the answer. So a really simple one. Let's say, for instance, that one of the things that is a problem for you is that the dishes just pile up and pile up and pile up. And they pile up to the extent that every time you have something to eat, you just, I can't face those dishes. So you place them in the bowl as well and add to the pile. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, if you were to look at this from the point of view as, what do I need to take away here in order to ensure that I don't end up with loads and loads and loads and loads of dishes in the sink? Well, I suppose you mightn't even go there. You might think, what do I need to add? And it might be, well, I need to add this habit. I need to add this routine that every time I have my dinner, I'm going to wash the plates pretty much immediately. And it doesn't matter that I'll get a bit of indigestion. That's what I'm going to do. And so we might think in a traditional way of looking at it that we need to add something. We need to do more. We need to change our habit, create a new one, and try and then discipline ourselves to do that. And of course, we only need to fall off that habit once or twice, and then we're faced with that mountain of dishes, which feels such a deterrent, really, to even start tackling on. Now, that might work, by the way, adding something. It often, it can work. It's not that it's a bad strategy. It's just this other one, the complete opposite, is a good one as well, and we often miss it. So if we were to limit something rather than having to add a habit or add some willpower or add some discipline or whatever, what would we take away here that might get us the result? Well, one thing that you might choose to do, and of course this is just an example, this might not be a good solution either, but it's just a way of showing you, giving you a demonstration of how this kind of thinking can be enacted. One example that might fix that mountain of dishes, one limit that you could put is to maybe throw away some dishes. Maybe throw away dishes so that you only really have what you need. Maybe a little bit of spare capacity over the top. But maybe you've got a lot of dishes, because it strikes me that if you're building up a mountain of dishes and then you're able to then go and grab another plate for the next time to add to the mountain of dishes, it sounds like you've got quite a lot of dishes. And one of the things that would fix this, again, just as an example of how this kind of thinking works, is you might think, well, I only need 3 plates really, or I only need 2 plates, or whatever it happens to be. Why have I got all these extra plates that are allowing me to create a mountain of dishes? I'll throw away a load of plates. And what that'll mean is that I'll never have a mountain of dishes, because I won't have a mountain of plates to create that. And in fact, because I've only got a few dishes, it'll never get to a mountain, and I'll just have to clean the things in order to be able to have my next meal. So if you've got that particular problem, the mountain of dishes problem, I don't know, this might or might not fix it. That's not really the point of the example, I suppose. It's just to give you an example of that opposite way of thinking. Because as I said in a past podcast, the opposite of a good idea can often also be a really good idea. It's not that the opposite of a good idea is therefore a bad idea. So whereas we're thinking about adding stuff all the time, that's an example of where we can talk about limiting stuff. And again, I think of a project that I was working on a couple of years ago, and it was really quite complicated, a lot of moving parts, and in order to make this work properly in the way that I'd envisaged, then the only way to fix this, I thought, was to add more work hours. I was already working a lot on this project, but I had to add even more. I had to sit there in front of the computer even more than I was already. I had to put something extra in the recipe bowl. And so I switched it and thought, well, what could I take away? And there were a couple of things that I decided to take away. And the first one was the complexity. The complexity of the problem. I simplified it. And the second way I did that is I asked myself, a question: what would this look like if it was easier? And what that led me to do is to drop some of the vision that I had for this project. It was quite a perfectionist vision. And I thought, okay, it won't be absolutely perfect in the way I envisaged it, but it'll certainly be good enough. And so by taking away that perfectionist vision, and so taking away the complexity, I didn't have to put more hours in. In fact, I worked much less hours on it as a result. And it's only because instead of thinking, what do I need to add to this? What extra thing do I need to put in the bowl here in order to create the solution that I wanted? I just took a step back, changed my angle and thought, actually, what do I need less of here? And I decided that it was complexity that I needed less of. And if I got rid of the complexity and just made it a bit simpler, maybe a little bit less perfect, then it was pretty much already done. And I didn't need hardly any time to add to that at all. And so there's just 2 examples. And so my invite to you is to think about what are the limits that you might put in place? What are the things that if you're noticing that there's something difficult going on, or maybe a little problem that keeps on showing up, the answer, may well be to add something. It really might, because that's a good idea too. But the answer might just as easily be to take something away. And I'm guessing that might not be an angle that you look at a problem from quite as often as the let's add something idea. And so my advice is just to kind of play with the idea, I suppose, to change your angle on some of the issues that you're facing and see, is there something you could actually take away here that would make the problem a lot simpler and that might provide you with the solution that you're after? And so, have a little play with it, have a little experiment. I'd be interested too to see what some of your examples are. And of course, if you like this idea and think it might be useful to someone else, please share it. Spread the podcast around, subscribe to it for free wherever you get your podcasts. Watch them on video at asliceoftherapy.com, and you can work with me direct. I'm Alun Parry at the Liverpool Psychotherapy practice, which is at liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk. And of course, I work online as well. So if you're not in Liverpool, don't worry. If you love the podcast and you'd like to work with me, that's still okay, because we can do it by telephone or video camera. And in fact, during a lockdown, that's how I'm seeing everyone, whether you're in Liverpool or not. So thanks for listening, and I'll be back tomorrow with another episode, and I'll see you then.